Hi there. Okay, so in this tutorial I will do my best to explain how you can rig and animate the hinges inside of Element 3D's Motion Design 2 pack. If you are a user of any other 3D program, for example like Cinema 4D or 3ds Max, this is probably not a problem for you. You will be able to figure it out on your own because it requires building something that's called a hierarchy. It's similar to parenting stuff inside of After Effects. So if you know how to parent nulls or inside of After Effects to one another, it's basically the same thing but still a little bit different, and I will do my best to explain this to you. First, let's see what we're going to be doing. We're going to the so let me explain the project so far. If you look at the project here, it's a basic project setup for Element 3D. We have a camera Element 3D layer with the Element 3D effect on it, and this white solid here is for the sole purpose that when I bring in a Motion Design 2 packs model inside of the project, you will be able to see it a lot easier than if it was on a black background, because the models are a dark color. So let's go inside of Element 3D. This is the Motion Design 2 pack and we have the hinges selected. Let's take a look at this simple hinge. You can see that it's made out of two parts: the base plate and base part, and the arm that swings around it, that rotates around this pivot point here. If you open up this list, you can see the parts that this model is made out of. So I think that by default this is what you will get. You can, when you open this list, you can see these materials. That's not good. All you have to do is just click here on this icon here. This will show you the parts. This shows the materials and this shows the parts of a model inside of Element 3D. So if you select the base plate and you have the rotate tool selected and start rotating, you see that it rotates around the pivot point as it should. If you select the swing arm and start rotating, you see that it rotates as it should, where it should, around its pivot point. Now, if you want to animate this inside of a project, all you have to do is add, for example, the swing arm to a auxiliary channel here. So just click on the swing arm, go to the aux transform, select channel 1, and then press OK. The model is inside of your project, and if we go back for a second, you will see that the model is inside of group 1 here. So OK, go to group 1. Here are the aux channels for group 1. Open those up. Channel 1, that's the channel that we have assigned the arm to. Open it up, and by default position will be opened. Just close position, open rotation, and it's the Z rotation that you want to play around with, that will allow you to rotate the arm inside of your project and animate it. The rest is just basic keyframing. I assume you know how to keyframe. So let's go back to Element 3D, and we don't need this model anymore. So what if we want to animate a more complex model, for example one like this, which has 5 parts? If you open the list of the parts, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. Let's select the base plate. You see the base plate's pivot point is where it should be, and it rotates correctly. If we select the arm swing arm 1, it rotates where it should, but there is a problem already. The problem is that as it rotates, it's not taking with it all the rest of the parts of the hinge. And if you select, in this case, so let's say you rotate this like in this position and select the swing arm 2 and start rotating it, you will get a mess of things, and this is, I'm assuming this is not what you want. That's why you're watching this video. So yeah, that was a little bit cheesy, sorry. Okay, let's continue. In order to be able to animate this correctly, you need to rig this arm using the folders inside of Element 3D. You have to create a hierarchy. Basically, make some parts of the hinge children of other parts so that they move with one another. In order to explain this better, I will jump into Cinema 4D to illustrate this, because it's a lot easier to show it in Cinema 4D. So don't worry, you do not need to have Cinema 4D for this. This is only for demonstration purposes. So in Cinema 4D I have this basic project, let's call it that, setup, and we have 3 cubes. Try to imagine that these 3 cubes are 3 parts of the hinge. So let's say this one, cube 1 is the base, cube 2 is the middle part of the arm, and cube 3 is, for example, the claw. If you rotate any of the cubes, they rotate on their own nicely because their pivot point is on their absolute center. But what if I want these 2 cubes to follow the rotation of this cube? All I have to do is make them children of this cube. So this is basically what we will be doing inside of Element 3D, only with folders. Excuse me. So now if these 2 cubes are the children of cube 1, if I rotate cube 1 now, you can see that these other 2 cubes are rotating with it. So that's what's a very basic hierarchy that inside of a 3D program. Now a problem here is that if I select cube 2 and rotate it, cube 3 doesn't rotate with it along with it, because I need to make cube 3 the child of cube 2. So let's do that right now. And now if I rotate cube 2, you can see that cube 3 is rotating with it. And if I select cube 3, it rotates on its own. So let's assume that this is the claw. The claw rotates on its own. So cube 1 rotates everything, cube 2 rotates only the claw, and the claw rotates by itself. So this is a basic hierarchy. This is what we're going to be doing inside of Element 3D. I hope this little illustration helps you to understand it a lot better, because inside of Element 3 you have to use folders, and it is a little bit more tricky, but not too difficult. So let's do this. Load up this model. I strongly suggest that you use this model because you will be able to follow along a lot easier, and the basic principle is the same for every other model. So one very important thing that I should tell you, in order for you to be able to do this a lot easier, do not, once you load the model, do not rotate it, turn it in any position, because that'll mess up the orientation of the model according to the world's orientation, and repositioning the pivot point is going to be a little bit more difficult. I hope this makes sense. Whatever. Okay, let's just jump into it. So open up the list of the parts inside of this model. Turn off everything except the base. So you have only the base inside this group folder. Double click on the group folder and let's rename it base plate, for example. Okay, base plate. Now double click on an empty space here inside of this window to deselect everything, and click here to create one more new folder. Now this is where the building of the hierarchy starts. So grab this group folder, put it inside of the base plate, which will make this new folder a child of the base plate folder. Just as in Cinema 4D I have made the cube 2 a child of cube 1, if you recall. So just now it's a child of this one, and just put it underneath the hinge here. Inside have this folder selected, select the same model again, open the list of the parts and turn off everything except this swing arm 2 part. So if you see, sorry, swing arm 1 part. So you see everything's turned off, then just turn on this one part here, and close the list and double click on this folder, and we will rename this folder swing arm 1. Always remember to name and rename things in order for you to be able to navigate through complex scenes a lot easier later on in the project. Now double click here again to deselect everything, create one more folder. Now this folder, you make this folder a child of the swing arm 1 folder. That's because if now when you rotate the base plate folder, everything will rotate with it. When you rotate the swing arm folder, the base plate will not rotate with it, but everything above it or in this list and under it will rotate. You'll see this when the hierarchy is done. Put it underneath the hinge. While the new folder is selected, load up the new model, open the list and turn off everything except this swing arm 2 part. So this is the part that you want in this folder, swing arm 2. Close the list, double click here, rename it swing arm 2, and now double click here again and create to deselect everything, new folder. And this new folder, you probably understand the logic of this right about now. This folder is supposed to be the child of the swing arm 2 folder. Put it here, load the model again, close it, open the list. Sorry, no, can't answer that right now. Close everything except the 2 parts of the claw, so leave these 2 parts in this folder, and close the list, and we will double click here and rename this folder the claw folder. Okay, so if you set up everything here correctly, you will have this one group here with all these parts of the hinge here. And if you, for example, turn off the swing arm 1, everything with it disappears. That means that because it is the parent of all the parts that are in the list underneath it. If you turn off the swing arm 2, swing arm 1 remains visible and the claw with it disappears. That's because of the hierarchy that I've talked about in Cinema 4D. If you turn off the claw, only the claw disappears because it's not a parent of anything, it's just a child of the swing arm 2. And if you go up the hierarchy, basically it's a child of everything else. So now that you've reached this point, you need to readjust the pivot points of all the different folders, because if you select the base plate, you see the pivot point is zeroed out in the 3D space. So if you rotate this, everything rotates with it correspondingly. So you do not need to reset the pivot point of the base plate. If you select the swing arm, you will see the pivot point of the swing arm 1 is at the same place, which is not good because you get rotations right like this. But we already have made some progress, because if you remember in the beginning when we rotated the swing arm 1, none of the parts above it rotated with it, but now they do. So that's what the hierarchy does. And swing arm 2, the pivot point is also in the same position, which is not good, but it's rotating with the claw. Claw pivot point is also at the same position, and that's not good. So let's fix this up. Click here, go into the front view, zoom in on it a little bit, and then go into the wireframe here. Sorry. Now that we are in the wireframe, we need to reposition the pivot points of the different folders. So as we said, the base plate folder is where it should be. Swing arm 1 needs to be repositioned, so click on the movement tool here and click on this button here, which will allow you to reposition the pivot point or the axis point, or whatever this thing is called. So if you move this thing now, you will move the whole model with it. That's not good. Now if you click this, you can move just the pivot point, put it here. When you're doing this, just think about where should my model's part rotate, and use kind of that logic. So where is the rotation point of my model? That's where the pivot point should be. So zoom in here and try to just eyeball it somewhere in the middle. Something like this should be okay. Now zoom out, go up a little bit, select the swing arm 2 and readjust the pivot point of the swing arm 2 here. like this. That should be okay. You can go crazy precise with it if you want. Now the claw, pivot point of the claw should be here. I think you're starting to probably understand what this is supposed to work like. Now that we have the pivot points readjusted, click on this to lock them in place where they were. Now if you select the claw now and the rotation, start rotating, you can see that the claw is rotating where it should rotate. If you select the swing arm 2, you can see that it rotates where it should rotate. Swing arm 1 rotates where it should rotate. So this is how you set up an arm hinge inside of Motion Design 2 for animating. But how do I animate it? Very easily. You can probably use basic logic to determine that by yourself, but I will show you anyway. So if you want for any reason the base to rotate, you have to assign the base to an auxiliary channel. But for example, if you look at this base plate a little bit, you can see that it's bolted down. So just putting it somewhere on a wall, on a ground, and leaving it without an auxiliary channel should be fine, because you don't really need to rotate this base plate. If you want, all you have to do is, let's say you want, so select the base plate folder, not the hinge part. You have to select the folder and assign the folder to the auxiliary channel 1, and then you select the folder for the swing arm 1 and you assign that to channel 2, then the folder for the swing arm 2, assign it to auxiliary channel 3, and the folder for the claw, assign it to auxiliary channel 4. Now if you want, so this will allow you to rotate the claw like this, but if you want to be able to animate the individual parts of the claw, let's call it the fingers, open up in the claw folder, click on this model part here, open up the list of the parts, and you see claw 1 and claw 2. So you all you have to do is assign them to different auxiliary channels. Since the first 4 auxiliary channels are already taken by the upper hierarchy, so you select claw 1 and select channel 5. Claw 2 will be channel 6. No, cannot answer you right now, sorry. Then we are all set up for animating. Let's check this out, how this will work inside of a project. So check this out. This whole model is inside of group 1. So open up group 1 and open up the auxiliary channel list. We already have the channel 1 selected, so by default position will be open, just close position, open up rotation, and it's the Z rotation. So that will, in this case it's not the Z rotation, it's the Y rotation. That I'm assuming this is the only way a base plate can rotate. So then we open up channel 2 and rotation, Z rotation. You will rotate the first part of the arm with everything with it, rotating correspondingly and correctly. Then channel 3, Z rotation. Okay, that's because that's position. So not position, rotation. Got me surprised a little bit. Okay, so rotation. That's how rotation works here with the claw nicely. And then open up channel 4 now, and we can rotate the claw. Position again, sorry, I am a bit tired. Rotation, the claw rotates nicely. Now if you want the claw to open and close, you have to have channel 5 rotation up like this, see, and channel 6 rotation, last position, rotation, like this. Everything is just basic keyframing. So that's basically how you rig and animate 3D models inside of Element 3D. Animating these kind of things is a lot easier in a fully dedicated 3D program like Cinema 4D or 3ds Max, but if you're not a user of any of those, Element 3D is your next best choice. And in order to animate a little bit more complex model like this, a hierarchy like the one I showed you is the solution. It is a little bit tedious to animate everything with these auxiliary channels like this here, but it can work. I hope this video was helpful, and thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.